Welcome to Cycling Demystified, brought to you by Foundation Bike Fit and Frequency Cycle Works, the podcast where we help you take your cycling to the next level by sharing the knowledge from experienced bike fitters, mechanics, and the hidden players within the bike industry.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. And this week we are starting a little mini-series on the modern mistakes that riders make when it comes to bike fitting. And actually, it's probably going to develop into more generalised discussion around cycling itself. But we're going to try and keep it within the context of bike fitting because that's what we do. If you don't know who we are, my name's Wei, and we're also joined by
Grumpy old Matt.
Grumpy old Matt, and you might hear Ev in the background.
Swearing at a track we're down.
Well, waving quite an interesting concoction.
Let's not go there.
No.
I'm offended.
Well, we've got a bit of time. We'll talk about it because it's pretty. I don't know. Those combinations just shouldn't be allowed.
Well, speaking of mistakes, there's several mistakes that have happened here.
Yeah.
All in one part of a bicycle. Yeah. Anyway.
So if you hear any banging and swearing in the background, that's it. We are going to start by outlining six. I think it's going to be around about 6 different common modern mistakes that we see that riders are making within their bike fitting. And hopefully by addressing some of these, then we can give you better awareness for what you're doing on a bike, how your bike riding can be improved, and how to improve that enjoyment of the bike, because that's really what it's about. It's about riding, bike riding, enjoying your bike riding.
Is it?
Yeah. So the first mistake we are going to talk about is putting humans first.
Or not putting humans first.
Well,
which is the mistake.
Yeah, the mistake is not putting humans first. Maybe that's ironic because we are bike fitters. And so the word human doesn't even feature.
Well, we've talked about that at length before, haven't we? About why the whole construct of bike fit is a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, if you haven't read it, Matt wrote an article on our blog.
I did, yeah.
It's called Bike Fitting Has a Problem.
Yeah, it does. Several. We're going to go through 6.
So we've addressed bike fitting has a problem. But yeah, let's delve a little bit more into it. Because I think if you get the concept of this, then I think our approach to bike fitting and why we do what we do will seem more relevant, and I think it's an important one to grasp. Maybe it's something that you just have to go through the journey, as it were, to kind of really understand, but it's always worth getting stuck into, having some thought experiments around. So yeah, we're going to talk about humans and bikes and how they interact, and maybe the hypothesis.
Easy for you to say.
Oh my goodness.
Hypothesis.
As my name suggests, I'm not English.
Wait, you are definitely English. What are you on about? Yeah. Let's not go there.
Anyway. Straying.
Just excuses.
Yeah. So the concept is that the human should come first when we are thinking about our cycling and our bike fitting. The priority is always the human, not the bike. And we are essentially, in what we do on our day-to-day basis, as bike fitters, as cyclists, we're trying to improve the human being. Cycling should be a sport that improves us as people through what we do. And bike fitting is trying to help people have a better relationship, interaction with their bicycles, which is kind of the crux of your article, which you said about bike fitting has a problem, in that it is called bike fitting. And really what we do is help human beings move better by moving bits of the bike around. That's just part of the process. But the name itself suggests that it's all about the bike, but actually it's all about humans.
Yeah, I think another thing to add there as well is that the relationship between human and bicycle is not just physical.
Ooh.
It is just as much a mental state as it is a physical one.
Are you talking about riders naming their bikes?
Partly. But one's relationship to cycling and one's relationship to one's bicycle, both physically and mentally, is important. And we talk about the physical a lot, but not necessarily what cycling means on the individual, the psychology of cycling. Exactly.
Why we do what we do?
Why do you do it? What are you running away from?
What are you not doing?
What are you not doing? Exactly. So I think that's an often understated kind of part of the relationship, is the psychological relationship between you and your bicycle.
Yeah, well, it does drive all the decision making that you end up making towards your cycling. I mean, why do you make the choices that you make? And we certainly take the philosophy that in bike fitting there are only choices. So there's no one perfect bike position. Sorry guys, that's just the truth. That, you know, you can ride many different bikes, you can ride different positions, and they can all be different.
And they can all be comfortable.
And they can all be comfortable and effective
Yeah.
for what you want. But the critical thing is to understand why you're in a certain position, what you're trying to achieve, and why that position is effective for what you want to do. So if you don't know what you want to do, then that makes the task a lot harder. This is why we have an extensive questionnaire before people even get to us, so we can start to unpick some of the whys. And it's always an interesting one when you get people to answer the question, so what do you want to achieve on your bikes? And they say, I want to be a crit racer, I want to race ultra distance, do an Ironman, and maybe do some cyclocross as well, all on the same bike in the same year. All right, being a bit facetious, but it's probably not that
Not far off.
not far off. And that's great. You can have all those desires, ambitions. It's great to want to do everything. That's the beauty of the sport. There's a lot of different ways that you can ride your bike, but it also highlights a kind of lack of appreciation or understanding for, you know, why these things are so different and why they're different bikes and positions for all of these things. So different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. And the tool has to serve the human,
Yeah.
not the human be a slave to the tool.
Well, it's always an interesting one, isn't it? When people come in and you have to kind of pose the question of, well, do we adapt the bike around the human, or do we adapt the human to the bike? And well, there's a kind of grey area in between, and that's where I think choices come into it. And I think that our job is to help people make those choices, to understand all the information around it, around those choices and decisions, and then with that knowledge that they have, that newfound knowledge, then you can make a much more informed decision. And I think without like kind of being too mean to everyone, I think the majority of people that come into our studio basically just want us to move bits of the bike around. And
I'll be mean,
yeah,
if you want.
yeah.
Go on, you finish and then
Well,
I'll be mean.
that was it. Like, you know, people just want the easy win of moving bits of the bike around, and that will be the fix. That's, you know, that's their position. Kabam, done. I'm comfortable and fast because I'm in the right, air quotes, right position. And in some ways, I think we have to kind of take some of that approach in order to, and expectation, and people have to enter in the conversation, and then we have to have a larger discussion about, you know, this is just the start of the process. This is only one fundamental part of the process, and the other parts are also important. Talking about, you know, why you're doing stuff, how's your body functioning, and how is your body functioning? Is it functioning as well as it could be? And, you know, is this bike position serving you? Any more meanness on that?
I mean, Yeah, I was just going to put it a bit more bluntly.
Go on then.
So, yeah, I mean, basically, I agree with everything you said. Like, if you think about bike fitting as a construct, and it's an interesting point of like, do you fit the bike to the rider or the rider to the bike? And, we tend to operate, like you said, in the grey area between those two things. But effectively, the bike has to create an environment for that human to move well in that environment. And when we talk about a bike environment, all we really mean is where you sit and where your hands go relative to where your feet are, and the contact points that allow that to happen. So if that bike position and that environment is as good as it can be, i.e., the bike is a finite object, it can only be adjusted in so many different ways, then you kind of have to look outside of the bicycle in order to find improvements. And what is the other part of the system? It's the human. And to be brutally honest, most modern humans' functionality in terms of movement is diabolical, and I count myself in that as well. We have much to improve on in terms of our functionality, both on and off the bike. So the expectation that moving a couple of components around on a bicycle is going to fix all of your woes and you're going to suddenly become this absolute speed demon that can ride all day and in comfort and not feel anything is a woeful mismanagement of expectation, both on part of the cyclist and the bike fitter. So getting this kind of like construct of bike fitting as a magic wand that's like going to fix all your problems is usually the first step to improvement. It's like you said, having that understanding of how you're interacting with the bike. Does the bike currently, or the bike position, the bike itself, or whatever you want to call it, the bike environment, does it currently best serve the purpose that it is being used for? And if the bike position and the environment is as good as it can be, then what else is there to look at? Well, you've got a body sitting on top of this thing that is infinitely adjustable if you work hard enough at it. So yeah, in terms of like, cut a long story short, the bike is only really at most half the equation. They all go just as slowly when they're stood still, unless there's someone on them. So, and this is where kind of the whole construct of bike fitting kind of isn't really fit for purpose in name, is that we're not really fitting bikes. We're educating riders on how they interact with the machine and how they can potentially do it better. Yes, there may be changes to the environment, i.e. the bicycle, but ultimately it's just a way of creating or allowing that rider to create better movement for themselves.
Yeah, and as we've said before, if we find that people tend to obsess over kind of millimeters here and there.
Yeah,
and
don't optimize people, maximize.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah.
You want to maximize your potential.
Optimizing isn't for most people. It's not for you. You can't optimize unless you've maximized first. So if you haven't got the first 99% sorted, then the 1%ers that you're obsessing over mean nothing. So even just on the base level, if you're not sleeping enough, if you're not eating well, and if you're not drinking enough water, like respecting yourself as a human being, then you can kiss goodbye to any ambitions that you've got of riding a bike, even towards the level of mediocrity. So maximizing rather than optimizing and getting out of this marginal gains mindset is probably going to serve the vast majority of people far better than trying to find these tiny little gains that ultimately might not matter. I'm getting grumpy now.
But I think it was because, well, you had a bit of a disappointing weekend of bike fitting, didn't you?
In ways, yeah. I mean, it's in some ways it was interesting, and in some ways it was quite disappointing. Yeah.
But it was exactly that issue of we'd seen these people before. We managed to find a position that worked well with their bodies, and they've come back to us after an extensive bit of period of.
Well, in some cases, years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it years? Yeah.
4.
No, 4 years. Wow. Okay. Come back to us, still with the same bike, exactly the same position, and so on, but with new aches and pains. And so, we want to try and figure out, what are these aches and pains? Well, if nothing's changed about the bike, there's only one other thing that's changed, and that's a human being. And it's always a difficult conversation to have with someone.
Well, it's as difficult as you want to make it, isn't it?
Yeah. You got to look at yourself in the mirror. This is the only thing that's changed. And so if you want to keep riding this bike and performing, and actually you've got even greater ambitions to achieve this year than you've ever have done before, then yeah, you're going to have to put some work in. And that's not only in terms of improving oneself as a human being, but just in general health.
Yeah.
This is where the human first kind of mentality has to come into place. And optimizing is often seen as optimizing the bike rather than optimizing the human. Is this new position actually going to do well for you in the long run? And I think we're going to get into a bit more of this in future episodes in this little mini series as well. They're all kind of connected. I'm sure you'll see the trends. But yeah, we got to think about your health as a human being and whether or not bike riding is serving you.
Yeah, and put it this way, health is a prerequisite of performance.
Exactly.
If you haven't got your health, then you can kiss the idea of performance goodbye.
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, like making sure that you're starting from a baseline of health and wellness, and then deciding, okay, is the current bike position serving me well? Or is it something that, I need to work into rather than just make the bike fit me as I am? Do I need to actually put some time and effort into maybe some areas that I haven't or have neglected in order to be able to move forward and achieve what I want to achieve or have a chance of achieving what I want to achieve?
Yeah. Because, if somebody has poor movement patterns and poor mobility or poor strength, or it could be better for sure, and we simply just put the bike in a position that allows them to pedal in their current state, is that just compounding their poor movement patterns, their poor movement, their poor flexibility? Is that actually helping them? Sure, you might be able to go out and ride your bike and you'll get some cardiovascular fitness from that, and maybe that's enough. But you really do have to ask that question of do you actually want to improve yourself, or do you want to actually just stay in this kind of position? And so we often talk about your bike fit should be a little bit challenging in a way. We want to encourage better posture, better movement out of you. And this is why it's a process. You can't just change something and it's wham, done. You're not a machine, you're not a robot. You're not made up of ones and zeros and certain angles and restricted angle ranges and so on. And yeah, there's a lot of trial and error involved. But if you're accepting of that process of challenging yourself, trying to discover where those limits are, discovering what works for you specifically, then I think that's where you can really make meaningful improvements through your bike fitting.
And being aware that progress isn't linear seems to be quite an interesting concept to the modern human. In the fact that input doesn't necessarily always mean output. There's a lot of factors that go into forward progress. And sometimes you have to take one step back to take 2 steps forward.
Or go a little bit sideways. I had a conversation with someone the other day who was like, I'm just a little bit disappointed in my bike fit because I've tried it out for a couple of weeks and it just didn't really work. I'm losing a bit of power. I'm just not really feeling a good position on there. I was like, well, that's great. Now we know which direction we need to move in. Like, we didn't know which direction would be best for you. We've tried one position. It clearly doesn't get you where you want to go. So let's go in a different direction because we know that that did work in the past. So let's go that way. And if you hadn't tried that, then you wouldn't know which direction to go. You wouldn't know if you were in the best position or a worse position or wherever it is. And I think it's that commitment to that kind of testing process that if you really want to better yourself, then you need to go through that. It's hard. But as with a lot of things in life, best things require effort and commitment. So, what are we trying to say? That bike fitting is definitely important. Like, moving bits of the bike around are definitely important because it gives you that grounding, a starting point. But don't forget that it's really all about you, and both from the psychological point of view of what do you want, what do you want to achieve? Is that reasonable? Is it not? One of those ambitions. But also about your body. At what point are you at in that journey of improving oneself? And I make the assumption that everyone's trying to be a slightly better human being. Bike riding is fun, and they're trying to have fun out on their bikes and so on. Certainly anyone who's listening to this podcast, I think, is...
I'm not overly convinced.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of people who come in here and they're like one-hit wonders, aren't they?
Which is fine.
Yeah.
But I think to go a little bit deeper down the psychological route, I think you really have to ask yourself about, what does bike riding mean to you? Why do you want to ride a bike? Do you want to ride a bike? Or do you just want to pose at the calf and look at your bike?
Yeah.
Both are fine, but you've got to make a choice. And that, even just knowing that will help you make an informed decision about how the bike can serve you best.
Or the purchasing decisions.
Or the purchasing decisions, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, one example would be, I know we bash it all the time, but integrated cockpits, bars and stems.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that wrong, that's a very expensive thing to change. And even if you have the information to hand, it still doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the correct components fitted. So in the quest for a more pleasing aesthetic, i.e. no cables, one-piece bar and stem, everything looks very clean, does that component actually serve your bike riding? As an example. Yeah. Would you be better off with a two-piece bar and stem where you can see some cables, make some adjustments, and have more choice over your position to make changes easily should you want to? Or are you going to go down the aesthetic route, tie yourself in, and then have to spend another $1,000 if you want to change it again?
Or the, air quotes, aerodynamic route.
Oh, aero's not for most people.
Yeah.
It's not.
But then people want to...
they want to feel aerodynamic.
Yeah, they feel that it is important.
Exactly.
And, it's not our choice to make.
No.
It's like, someone else's choice that they want the most aerodynamic bike.
Yeah.
Because they feel that's going to, help serve their ambitions and so on. So it's just making people aware of those consequences.
Going in eyes wide open.
Yeah. And I always find it really ironic when people come to us with, say, an aero road bike with integrated handlebars and stem, and then they want to put clip-on aero bars on. and you're like, well, I can't actually do that.
Yeah.
there's no aero bar extensions that actually work with this bike.
Yeah, exactly.
But you've already got an aero optimized road bike. That's pretty clear. So why do you want to put aero bars on it? Well, you know. And then actually, that's an interesting example of well, actually, it comes back to being the human. The human is the slowest part of the equation. So aero bars help to get the human more aerodynamic, not the bike itself. But you can't do that with integrated bars. So, or if some manufacturers do make some proprietary parts to turn their integrated bars into aero bar compatible parts and so on, but they're never very satisfying. There's always some limitations in there.
Did I write something about aero bars and road bikes as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's quite a while ago.
I feel like, yeah.
Like, should you do it?
Well, no is the short answer, but
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got to serve that. What you're doing has to serve you, basically, and your ambitions. I think that's what we're kind of getting at. And you know, rule one: know thyself. So once you know what it is that you want, what cycling means to you, you can make those decisions for yourself based on information rather than guesswork.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of a bike fit, really, is to give you that information. It's not a precision fit. It's not a process where you're told this is exactly your position. This is, you know, bringing your awareness.
Well, that leads nicely into the next bit, doesn't it?
Segue.
So segue into, yeah, so we've established that bike fit can often help create the environment for better movement.
Yeah.
But not all bike fit is created equal, is it?
No.
There's lots of different ways to cut the cake.
Yeah.
And our way is slightly different from a lot of well-known bike fitting methods in the fact that we have a very low reliance on technology.
Yeah. Well, it's a human first approach.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
So I guess this is where we were going with this this whole title.
We were getting there, yeah.
Yeah, we take a human first approach. So your movement, your ambitions, your desires, that's the important stuff that we want to look at. And the bike itself becomes a tool to kind of help you get there. So if we're prioritizing the human and how you move, your quality of movement, then you need that awareness of what you're doing.
Yeah, call it proprioception.
Proprioception. So yeah, we're very big on proprioception. So proprioception being just your awareness of your movement.
Feelings.
Feelings.
So yeah, you are very much an active part of the process if you come and see us for a bike fit, because we don't know what you feel.
Yeah.
We got no clue.
Yeah.
We can see stuff that you can't see, but we got no idea what you feel. Yeah. So, and I think this is a kind of an ongoing gripe of ours, isn't it? It's like the lack of proprioception of the modern cyclist.
Well, it's not really people's fault. Like pretty much everything in our society is designed to reduce the amount of proprioception that we have, or make things easy so we don't have to think about. And well, all the natural processes that we have inbuilt in our bodies have been overridden by, kind of human-built processes, so on.
Advancements, in air quotes, in technology.
I mean, even just we were just talking about integrated handlebars, Ev. So,
but I think like
Ev's about a third of the way through an integrated bar setup.
But I think like ignorance isn't an excuse. Like, we still have those receptors, the ability to gain proprioception of our surroundings. It's just we've got lazy and we haven't used it.
Yeah. So yeah, it is amazing. Like everyone does have the ability to feel. Some find it more difficult than others, but we tend to act as guides as to kind of what's going on. And it is amazing every time we kind of fit shoes, insoles, and do a bit of what we call foot optimization within our bike fits. then
I call it correction.
correction.
Yeah.
Not breaking toes.
No, I just don't like the word optimize.
Yeah. Connection.
Yeah.
Foot connection. Yeah.
Connective correction.
Connective correction.
There's a tongue twister for
Yeah.
you.
That seems to be the most kind of groundbreaking part of the bike fit, when people suddenly feel like, oh, I can feel my entire foot connecting through the pedal stroke. I can understand what my big toe is doing and what my fifth metatarsal head is doing, and I can feel some heel.
Honestly, we could spend 4 hours on feet.
This is true.
But once you get the body in a place where it can better feel its connection to the bike, the floor, where it is in space, that's when things often start to happen.
Yeah.
And even just kind of like teaching a rider what to look for,
Yeah.
and what to kind of be aware of,
Yeah.
and just to kind of almost poke the bear and just get them to think about certain things.
Yeah.
They start to notice different things when you start to make changes.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's just raising people's awareness that this stuff exists.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, yeah, I can feel this change or that change, or I feel my foot working in a different way, or I can feel part of the shoe that I didn't feel before.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So,
and it always gets better, doesn't it? Like when you first start, you start by making some pretty big changes to their bike position. They're like, oh yeah, I can feel that. But then as you go through the fit, you progressively make smaller and smaller changes as they become more sensitized to what they're looking for and aware of like the changes. And I think that's the important thing that really shows that, yeah, this is actually working. And the fact that pretty much everybody can do it proves that, yeah, this is a good way forward, and this is the way that we need to teach your body. But the interesting thing about human bodies is that they just do so much on automatic.
Yeah.
Which is both the beauty and the difficulty of kind of working with bodies. And quite often, until your body knows what bad is, what a bad position feels like relative to a good position, it's really difficult to make the decision, because your body doesn't know, your mind doesn't know what good is or how good it could be, and so it just accepts the current best possible, what it knows, what it's been exposed to, and just kind of gets on with it until something breaks at the very worst situation. So our job again is to literally teach the body, how good a position can be, like how, and by showing the body where it is when it's out of range, when it can't function efficiently, where it's creating a bit of pain. That's where it suddenly establishes this context.
But this is the more difficult path, because you're having to think and engage with your body, which requires energy, and potentially you might learn something that you don't like, or it might show, highlight areas in where your functionality is lacking, where there's work to be done. So humans like what they know. My nan says, I know what I like and I like what I know. And there's safety in that. And it's kind of like it's the path of least resistance. But if you do want to break out of these, known movement patterns, these like, potential pain cycles or injury cycles, then maybe trying a different way can illuminate a different path. So you have to have that kind of like willingness to put yourself out there, maybe kind of think about things in a different way, rather than kind of sticking to the known path. It's like, well, bike riding is supposed to hurt. What's Rafa like? Glory through suffering, that sort of thing. Absolute rubbish. So otherwise nothing's going to change. So actually learning what bad feels like, so you have a frame of reference for what good feels like, is super important. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yeah.
That's basically what bike fitting is.
Yeah.
You can't taste the good porridge unless you've had the cold porridge and the hot porridge before.
We should change our name.
It's true.
Goldilocks.
Like, you know, on a very basic premise,
Yeah.
you don't know what good feels like until you've experienced bad.
Yeah. You know what? This is exactly how everyone should be using their power meters or their tech.
Like Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Well, like, you know, everyone's obsessed with like measuring stuff, and you were just alluding to, you know, there is safety in kind of measuring stuff because it tells you whether or not you're right or wrong.
Yeah, you don't have to think.
Yeah.
It just tells you. You look at a number and it goes, and your brain immediately goes, "Oh, that's a good number," or "That's a bad number."
Yeah.
So, well, what are you basing this on?
Yeah. Is it the best number?
Yeah. Do you even know what the number means?
Yeah.
Does the number have any context?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't in most cases.
Yeah. And again, like this is what I see like so much irony in the way in which we use tech these days, because everyone's obsessed with like, you know, their power numbers, their FTP, their heart rate or whatever. Everyone wants to be measuring all of that, but well, as you said, not necessarily understanding really what to do with that kind of data. But also, I think that's what the approach of like what bike fitting has been before, is to measure stuff, so that you can assess it in some kind of way. And if you rely on just purely using that measurement as a gauge of like, yeah, this is right because it's, you know, this angle or this measurement.
Computer says it's green.
Green, yeah. You know, again, that's you haven't tested, you know, the boundaries of it, and so you don't know if it really is the best or not. It's just, you know, a predetermined box which you've put yourself in. And, you know, as a human being, you're individual, you're different, so on. So is that box really the best box for you? And so if you do end up just relying on the numbers and not testing beyond that, those boundaries, thinking about kind of what feels good and what feels bad, or finding out where the edges of those boundaries are, then you're always going to be in the average. Like you're simply just going to be the average, and
you might not be average.
Yeah, I don't think there's an average individual out there.
But this is the thing: it's and this is a pitfall of modern society, not just bike fitting, in the fact that we seem to have lost the skill of critical thinking. And all this data, all these measuring devices, all these numbers, kind of take the need to think critically away. It's like, oh, you know, this is a social norm that this is a good number, or this is a not such a good number.
Well, that's the pitfall. Isn't
That's the
it?
pitfall,
That's
exactly.
the pitfall.
Yeah, and what you kind of want to get to is the point where you can look at a data set, or look at an output, or look at, you know, angle ranges or whatever, and look at that data in a critical way and go, well, is this right for me?
Yeah.
So, you know, context of bike fitting, as you know, that's what we do. Like, if you have a bike fit that is based on normative body angle ranges, and everything on the screen is bang in the middle of said ranges, but your position feels garbage, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, computer says yes, body says no.
Yeah.
Which one are you going to go with?
But going back to kind of what we actually want to use tech for is to relate that back to our feelings.
Yeah.
You know, what does our body actually feel? It's just another way of visualizing or understanding what our bodies are doing and feeling, and
it can give additional
simplifying
context. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like if you talk to racers, then the idea of using measurement tools is to improve their proprioception, improve their feeling of like what certain effort feels like. you want to know what 400 watts feels like? Well, let's go and do 400 watts. And then your body understands this is what it feels like. This is how much it hurts.
Exactly.
This is how much my legs are burning. And then you can use that as a way of becoming better or understanding during a race, this is what I'm doing. You shouldn't have to look at, the power meter to know. Like, and any, professional athlete, you'll find that the good ones, they do know. They know instinctively because they've trained it and they've understood it and so on. And so technology is there to be made, is there to kind of improve ourselves and to make it self-redundant. It's a training tool, really.
Exactly.
So there's plenty of racers who are out there who train with power, but then tape up the computer screens.
Well, the most famous one of modern times is like Remco won the Olympics twice without a power meter.
Yeah.
He did all right, didn't he?
Yeah.
But it's a good point. It's like, and it is giving additional context into what your sensory feedback is telling you.
Yeah.
So yeah, the kids who are real good, they know probably within 5 or 10 watts what they're pushing.
Yeah.
But they'll also know, relative to that number, what their blood lactate is likely to be.
Yeah.
And you can go down and down the rabbit hole. And it, again, is just a tool to give additional context to what effort the body is feeling.
Yeah. And so you can make better decisions.
Better decisions in the moment.
So the more knowledge you have, then the better decisions you can make.
Exactly.
And actually, we bash like kind of angle measurements and all the rest of it when it comes to bike fitting and so on. But actually what we are doing, we are measuring angles all the time. We're just using our eyes.
Exactly.
So, we've done so many bike fits that we kind of intuitively or understand, where someone's sitting within like normative ranges of what we would expect, say, leg extension would be or torso angle would be. And so we've made all those calculations almost instinctively from having seen so many bike fits already. But then the question is, we still have to go through the process of, well, is that right for that person? And, moving the handlebars up a bit, moving it down a bit, just to check, is this good?
But the other context as well is education. Like, you can improve someone's bike position in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But then that rider might not have learned what they need to learn in order to make better informed decisions down the line. So it's that kind of thing of like, it's one input, but have we served that rider if we just whiz around the bike, go bish bash bosh, position looks great?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's giving that rider the tools that they need to make better informed decisions going forward. Mm-hmm. And vision or visual feedback, visual data is just one part of the puzzle. Like, my session this morning with a gent, and I was teaching him to listen to the bike. And by the end, he got it. Like, we could tell basically whether he liked a saddle or not within about 15 seconds with his eyes closed, just by listening to the sound of his pedaling.
Yeah.
So it's just a different feedback loop that you can tap into if you need to.
Yeah. Yeah. And, some people, it just doesn't suit some people.
Yeah, and that's fine. There's more than one way to do this.
Yeah.
And you've got to find your way. We are not the fitters for everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And even just by knowing that, you can make a better informed decision for yourself.
Yeah.
So
what can we give riders to do to maybe take some of this human first approach? What could we, let's give them one tip to go out and do. Which
one each or one tip?
We could do one each.
All
right. Just so that they can get more into this idea of thinking about themselves, their bikes, their bodies, not relying too much on the tech initially, or getting better use out of their tech. Got a tip?
Yeah.
Go on then.
So, at the risk of sounding a bit Blue Peter, for this tip, you will need a kettle
A kettle.
or a coffee machine. preferably a kettle because it's hands-free,
Yeah.
a hard floor, and no shoes and socks.
Oh, all right.
So it's a great excuse to put the kettle on this.
Yeah.
So in the time it takes to boil a kettle, we can learn about how we are interacting with the ground. Or on a bicycle, how you're interacting with the pedal and the shoe, because that effectively becomes your ground.
Yeah.
So what I would encourage our good listenership to do is next time you go put the kettle on, stand on a hard floor, barefoot, on one leg. And I want you to think about your contact with the floor, channeling me in a Gary Ward here.
Leave some links to Gary Ward.
Exactly.
We're big fans.
So what I want you to think about is how you're creating contact between your foot and the ground. What parts of your foot have a heavier contact than others? So do you feel a heavier contact more towards the inside of your foot? Do you feel a heavier contact more towards the outside of the foot? Or is it kind of spread evenly through a big tripod surface area of your foot? So between your big toe, your little toe, and your heel. Does it feel different between the left and the right? And does one side feel easier to balance on than another? And that's all I want you to do. I want you to do that for a week and just write a little sentence or some notes about which side felt easier to balance on and where in your feet you feel are working hardest, where the weight is going through your feet. And this will give you a picture, if you do it for long enough, about how you interact with the ground in a single leg context. And the reason a single leg is important is because that's what you do on a bike. Yeah. You never push with both legs at the same time if your cranks are on correctly, which I'm hoping they are. Yeah. So like usually
cycling is a single leg sport, people.
Exactly. Yeah. But this will give you a really good idea of where there may be some potential biases and some potential asymmetries, overuse, which may put into context some of what you feel on a bicycle, maybe. Opportunities. You know. Opportunity knocks.
Yeah. If you're finding it hard to balance on one leg, then there's an opportunity.
You've got some work to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my tip.
Cool. I'm going to keep mine a bit simpler.
Fair enough.
Just say go outside and do some rides without any technology. No computers, no smartwatches, no heart rate monitor. Just go out, enjoy, ride, be safe, know where you're going, but enjoy it.
I mean, you put it in your back pocket.
Yeah, I just say just leave it all at home.
Well, if you need maps, then you know what I mean.
Yeah, but like most people, I think most people have, their a local loop.
I had two. I knew it turn by turn.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. That was one of the joys of when I was first getting into cycling. Was just going out there and discovering and almost memorizing routes, and you'd know, every turn, every corner, what's going on. Oh, it's changed today.
No corners on Zwift, mate.
Yeah, don't. This is riding outdoors. They're most definitely riding
like we used to do.
Yeah. Experiencing.
Yeah.
And just see what happens. Do you notice anything different? Do you notice anything better? And does it improve your bike riding? Yeah. Just build awareness.
Get your head out the numbers. Yeah. Ride with souplesse.
Indeed. Right. Well, hopefully that's been useful for you. And tune in next week for our part 2 of our 6-part series on modern bike fit mistakes. We're going to be talking more about pro athletes next week. And what we could learn from them, or maybe not learn from them. Let's see. But thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ta-da!
If you made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.
Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Wei or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram @frequencycycleworks. Until next time, keep on spinning.